Welcome to another CHRO Conversation, hosted by the Center for Executive Succession at the Darla Moore School of Business. I'm your host, Anthony Nyberg, and today we are speaking with John Murabito, Executive Vice President for Cigna, a global health services company with over 40,000 employees located in 30 countries, serving nearly 100 million customers. Hey John, thank you very much for joining us here today. It's a great treat for us to have you in town. Can we first begin talking about healthcare and, in general, what you see as trends going on in the healthcare industry?
At the end of the day, I mean, what we care about as a CHRO and as a leadership, not just HR, but CEO, CFO. I mean, we care about having, ensuring that our workforce has quality care at an affordable price. So, cost is very important. Quality and accessibility are all kind of key things. The same things we want for medical care across the country. Cost, quality, and access. I think we want, for our employees. And I would say an emphasis on cost. With the cost of medical care, going up so rapidly historically, less so recently, but going up really, quickly. It's a cost that we have to be really careful of, from a financial standpoint. And so we're looking at ways that, that I think the trends are toward, looking for healthcare companies to figure out how they can help us lower costs and at the same time provide, quality care at docs and, health providers that they want to see.
So from the outside, it seemed almost hopeless just like 4 or 5 years ago, right? I mean, the trend was so extreme. As you say, recently it seems to have been calming down a little bit. Do you see hope? I mean, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I absolutely see hope. Not to make this an ad for Cigna, but we've had the lowest rise in kind of cost of care for our customers and clients the last 3 years running. Basically, our medical trend as a company for our customers has been, certainly single digits and the lowest the last few years. Express Scripts, which the company that we're going to join with here in a matter of weeks, on the pharma side, they've had the lowest kind of cost of pharmaceutical care in the marketplace for the last few years. So, we feel like we're putting together two companies that are going to have the opportunity to work together to drive drive costs down. And, we have a goal ultimately, and I think it's certainly reachable, of driving the cost of kind of total medical care down for our clients to at or below CPI levels. And we feel like that's a realistic goal for us.
So obviously it takes a lot of hard work kind of every day to make that work, but is there anything that you can point to that makes that more feasible or makes you more successful at it than some other places?
I think partnership with physicians. We have over, I don't know the exact number, but we have, I believe, over 500, partnership kind of organizations with physicians, and where we work closely with physicians or groups of physicians to help drive down the cost of care through close management of patients and close management of their care through what we do from our medical management folks and what the docs do from their own physician groups. And so we work together for the good of the patient and the good of the customer, and for the kind of a better cost outcome for the typically the customers who oftentimes are employers. And so I would say our relationships with providers is really key to our success in terms of driving down cost.
So what is it about the relationship that makes it better? Is that just because there's more information flow between the two? There's more trust somehow?
There's certainly more information now than ever. I mean, the amount of data that we have as an organization to better understand what kind of care works and what kind of care doesn't. and kind of working with the doctors or the physician groups, the providers to make sure that that's known and used. The data analytics function within our company is just, it's large. Let's say that, and so we get a lot of kind of learnings about what's going to help the cost curve from what we do in analytics. We also have financial arrangements with providers where, particularly on the Medicare Advantage side, with the right levels of cost of care, it's beneficial to the provider as well as to the customer as well. So those kinds of arrangements are helpful also.
So switching gears a little bit, so you've obviously been incredibly successful in your career in multiple companies, but you've been at Cigna now for 16 years.
Yeah. Going on 16. Yep.
16. So much of the audience for this particular video is for students of HR. Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts on how they can try to be you?
I don't know if they want to be me. But I think one of the things is don't obsess over your career path. Work hard, be in job, take an early job that, with a high integrity company, high values company that clearly values human resources as a contributor to the organization. But don't obsess over, kind of much beyond that, because your career is going to take you in a lot of different paths. What you do initially is not what you're going to be doing even probably a couple of years from now. You're likely going to change companies, you're going to change jobs, you might even change careers entirely. I tell people, don't get crazy about your career path. Work hard, be happy, be at good companies, and more than likely you will get opportunities that will be put in front of you that will kind of help you ultimately get to a CHRO job if that's what you want to do.
Well, and one of the things we've talked about before is you've been really remarkably stable. I mean, as we've said, it's really unusual to be in that position for so long. But it took you a number of moves before that. So you were willing to take chances and be the yes person. I think you said move 9 times before you got to this one.
Yep.
Is that still within Cigna or within when you're trying to help people early in their careers? Is that still advice you would give them?
Well, it's a little different world today. So when I was moving all those times, those were kind of in the days when, when I was at Frito-Lay, I moved, 5 times. Those were the days when they would say, hey, we have an opportunity, and I'd say kind of where and when. And you almost had to move. I think today, although sometimes relocation is necessary, it's not as necessary as it used to be with the advent of kind of virtual work and more travel and easier travel and so forth. So it's not quite how it is. But I do think early in your career, if you have an opportunity to get different types of jobs, different kind of roles, build different skills, I think you should. Because down the road, when you're being considered for more senior jobs, those experiences and competencies that you built earlier, are going to be taken into consideration. So, if I'm considering somebody for a leadership team role, if they've only done a generalist job in a couple of places versus somebody who's done generalist jobs, but also maybe they took a stint in talent or maybe they took one in comp, that kind of variety in capability is, is attractive. So I would advise people to get different experiences. And it's easier to get those experiences early than it is late. When you've kind of built your salary up and you've built your skills up and you don't want to kind of take a step back, so to speak. I think getting a variety of experiences early is important. Plus, it also gives you the opportunity to maybe see what you like. Maybe you go into a comp job and you say, geez, this is what I want to, I love this. I want to be ahead of comp and benefits. That kind of thing happens all the time, so take those chances.
I presume another part of that is that when you were moving around all those places, you were actually then meeting and getting to know, and you're building up your own network.
Sure.
As an added.
Yeah. You build up your network of HR people, but not only HR. I mean, other leaders, other people around the country or around the world, for that matter, and that's helpful.
So another topic that you have great expertise with is the M&A work from an HR perspective, and so a couple of questions on that one. So one, you recently almost went through the massive merger with Anthem. Can you say a little bit about what that was like in terms of, from the head of HR, just managing the uncertainty within the organization?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was obviously a challenging time, I think, both for the people at Cigna and I think probably for the people at Anthem as well. So we had planned a very sizable merger. It was a horizontal merger, so because of that, we obviously had a fair bit of likely synergies that were going to take place that was going to have an impact on not just the kind of the corporate functions, but also other parts of the line where there was overlapping markets and so forth. And I think people were worried about that. I think they were also worried at the time about the culture. Cigna, we have a very, I think, distinct and we believe, really valuable and important culture, and that it's important to our workforce. And I think people were worried that, what's going to happen? We were the acquired company in that situation, and so how do you manage the uncertainty? You communicate, you stay as close to your people as possible. Those people who are your highest contributors and highest potential, you want to make sure you're staying particularly close to them and letting them know kind of where things stand and what could be available down the road. I think the key is just being as honest and authentic with people as possible, and talking about the advantages of a combined organization. And we did that as very successfully. Although the merger with Anthem ended up not working out because we didn't get the federal regulatory approval. Our people hung in, and we lost very few. And turnover was actually, interestingly, lower in the year or so time frame that we were going through that merger situation than it was in the couple of years prior.
That's shocking.
Yeah.
What do you attribute that to? Was that the increased communication that you were talking about?
I think it was just increased attention, increased focus on, kind of the importance of communication, staying close to our key leaders. We did things like, kind of change management groups and change ambassadors that we put in place. So we had a number of kind of mechanisms to stay really close to our people and understand what was going on, and be in position to answer questions, not just from leadership, but kind of deeper as well. And I think we learned a lot from that experience that's helping us now, obviously, as we're into another merger situation, this one which will be successful, and we should be in a position to close on the Express Scripts acquisition, very soon.
So on that topic, from a kind of a broader perspective, what is HR's role in mergers and acquisitions? Because often we think of that as just a finance function, and we kind of skip the HR side.
HR gets involved, very, very intimately in the run-up to the actual merger agreement being put together. I think the HR function, particularly the CHRO, the comp and benefits head, the leadership, kind of talent people are, very engaged in the construction of the merger agreement to ensure that it has the right protections for and provisions for the people in the company, that it has the right kind of structure built in for how the integration process will work, that it has the right level of kind of specificity with regard to leadership, where that's appropriate. And HR, the CHRO in particular is very involved in everything in the merger agreement relative to compensation, benefits, pension, equity treatment, change in control. All these things are, really of critical importance to how things happen and how people are treated as you go through a post-close environment and a selection situation. So you're very involved in the run-up to the merger agreement, and then post-merger, HR is really involved in kind of the let's say meshing of cultures, the integration process, the selection of leadership, the selection process, how you decide, all of your kind of foundational kind of comp and benefits and policies and so forth that are going to govern the new company from a people standpoint, what kind of investments you're going to make in people, what your structure looks like, how you're going to populate the jobs. Finance, legal, technology are all, also critical in their own areas, but HR has a role that is at least as involved, if not more so, than almost any other function.
And you mentioned culture a few times. How is culture, and particularly Cigna has a noticeably great culture that quite proud of, and rightly so. How is that considered either before a merger, particularly a big one, and then after? How do you make sure that the right culture, specifically your culture, gets disseminated? Yeah.
Well, it's beforehand it's considered as much as you can, as much as possible. It's sometimes difficult, kind of before a merger agreement is complete.
So could you think? I mean, could it be that a deal would actually be not accepted? That you'd be talking about it, and so you would go in and say, "Look, their culture is so different. This is just not going to work."
Yes, that could happen. Doesn't always happen. I mean, we see that just in general. If you look at, if you read, right, you're going to see that so many mergers fail because of cultural differences and social differences and so forth. I'm not talking about Cigna here in general, but I would say that sometimes those things are in fact identified in advance, but the kind of strategic value or financial value of the deal, is so attractive that you just say, oh, we'll find our way through those things. They become very difficult to find your way through, after the deal is struck. That could be problematic. I was in a deal many years ago when I was at Monsanto. Make a long story short, the CEOs couldn't get along. There were a lot of other cultural differences, and basically the deal was pulled apart really only because of social issues, and that that was a big problem. So it happens, and so I do think that you have to be aware of those things as much as you can going in, but it's hard to really get deep into the understanding of a culture before you do the deal.
And you're, of course, on the executive leadership team, and you work closely with the CEO. Is there, can you describe a little bit about, does that group function as a team in the way we normally think about it, or is it really kind of individuals that are responsible for their own functions?
It's big time a team. We take great pride in the teamwork of the leadership team. We spend considerable time on what we would call team health, making sure that we are working together, that we have the right decision-making processes, that we're giving each other, kind of candid feedback, that we're getting the most we can from each other, and that, that we operate as a team. So the team is really important. I can't say that every leadership team works that way, but at Cigna, the way our CEO and myself have thought about leadership is that the team is of utmost importance. I spend a fair bit more time with what we would call the enterprise leadership team than I do with the HR leadership team. So it's really critical.
So as the CHRO, do you have a unique role compared to some of the other members of the team in terms of helping that team be a team?
Yeah, so our CEO, David, he and I work closely together. He would look to me to be not the only one, but let's say a primary driver of making sure that that our team is operating in a healthy manner. He would want me to be the one to ensure that when we need an intervention, that we're getting it, whether that be reactive to something or more, just proactive. So yeah, I would say I have a unique role in, kind of ensuring that we have mechanisms in place to help with the health of the team and the teamwork.
And you are now a director on a publicly traded company. Can you describe it, and which is pretty unusual still for HR to be in that spot? Can you describe a little bit about what your responsibilities are on a publicly traded board?
Yeah, so I'm on the board of directors of Winnebago Industries, which is a recreational vehicle company, and I'm relatively new still to the board. I'm just 2 years in, and I'm the head of the comp committee, what we call the Human Resources Committee, for that board, and I'm also a member of the Nominating and Governance Committee. So, I would say on the board, because I'm chair of the comp committee, I have the primary responsibility to ensure that the executive compensation is done in a appropriate manner and at appropriate levels, and that the company has the right programs in place for CEO succession as well as leadership succession and development in general. And then as part of the Nominating and Governance Committee as a member, I work with the chair and with the CEO to make sure that we have the right board governance, kind of policies in place, and that we have the right and necessary kind of selection in place for new board members.
So with your HR background, does that help in some way on the board, or does it bring a different perspective that is useful for boards?
Yeah, well, in this case, that's why I'm on the board. So the CEO of Winnebago and the chair of the board were specifically looking for a CHRO or someone with significant HR expertise to come on the board. They didn't really have anyone with that background, and they felt like it was important, which I hand it to them for even thinking that way. And yes, I bring that to the board, and they specifically wanted it, in those areas: executive comp, leadership, succession practices, etc. Our chair, the chair of the board of Winnebago, is he's a former COO of a pretty large company, and he was always he's retired now, but when he was working, really focused on people and the importance of people and talent. And I think he recognized that having an experienced HR person on the board would be a plus.
And as you said, you're relatively new, although you've been there for 2 years now. Do you have suggestions for what boards ought to be doing to help someone transition into a board role, particularly maybe someone who has not been on many boards in the past?
Most people who are likely to be considered for public company boards, you would hope that they've had a fair bit of experience in the boardroom. If you're not on a board and you aspire to be on one, you'd want to be comfortable in a board setting. So I would suggest that in those situations, people try to get some board experience if they don't have it. If you're a CFO or a GC or a CHRO, you're in the boardroom all the time anyway, usually, and you're comfortable in that setting. But every line leader is not necessarily, in that situation. So if you're not and you aspire to a board, you should you should be comfortable in a boardroom, so kind of what the board is focused on. You understand governance a little bit, and you have a sense for how boards operate.
Have there been anything that was really surprising to you, or maybe not really surprising, but a little, being on that side compared to being on the presenting to the board side?
I don't want this to sound vain, but I would say no, at least not yet. I've been sitting in boardrooms for almost 20 years, and so, for pretty sizable companies, I don't want to say I've seen everything. That's for sure. I haven't, but I haven't seen anything yet at Winnebago where I said, "Gee, oh boy, that's a big surprise. I didn't really realize that." I would say, though, that being the chair of a comp committee for a public company certainly helps in my role as CHRO at Cigna. So, having a better sense for how you look at compensation and CEO succession from the standpoint of a director helps me better understand, I think, and anticipate maybe what our own directors, could be interested in or asking for. So I do think it's a plus.
Well, that's interesting, because I was kind of wondering if it was the move from being not on a board to being a director was similar in space from what I've often heard you guys talk about in terms of once you get to that C-suite, in part because it's dealing with the board, that's such a giant leap that there's.
I would say that's a much bigger.
That one was much bigger.
Yeah, okay. I think the leap from a number 2 in HR, no matter what maybe your job happened to be, to the CHRO job, and being having the board exposure and having to deal with the board and so forth. I think that's a much more shocking and kind of bigger leap than going into a board setting as a director. At least for me it was. Because
you've had that so much exposure to it and that
yeah, but if I think back, when I became the CHRO at Monsanto, that was I think in the year 2000. I'd been in a boardroom once, maybe twice, and just doing a quick presentation to a friendly audience that was told, I'm sure what they were told is, oh, we're bringing this guy in for development, we're giving him some exposure, don't beat him up, and so it was kind of easy to, when you get in there as the CHRO, all of a sudden, hey, you got to know your stuff. And so it was a little different.
So, and then the final thing is, of course, at the Center for Executive Succession, we have to talk about executive succession a little bit. Can you say a little bit about what you think of as the HR's role in executive succession? And has that changed your view at all now that you're on the board, thinking about it from that perspective too?
As a head of HR, I would hope, you would always think that executive succession, particularly for the CEO, is important. And that you're the one, I think, who primarily responsible to ensure that you have the right, systems in place to ensure that you have succession for the leadership of the company. I think being on a board just drives the importance of that home even more, but in particular at the CEO level. And so I even think about, kind of today, if there's probably an area where even after all these years as a CHRO that we could improve our process at Cigna, it's probably around how much attention and how much focus and how we think about CEO succession. I think we have good systems in place, generally speaking, but you can always improve. But I think the CHRO, you should be the, if not the architect, at least the inspiration to the architect for how you think about succession in your company and how much time, effort you and your team put on it, and how much time and effort the leadership team puts on it.
John, it is always a great treat to have you back here at the original USC, so thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks.
You just listened to another CHRO conversation. Today, John Murabito of Cigna shared his views regarding the changing healthcare industry and the role of understanding HR in leading businesses. As you also heard, John explained well why the new generation of HR professionals are the business leaders of tomorrow. On behalf of all of us who are associated with the Master of Human Resources program and the Center for Executive Succession here at the University of South Carolina, thank you for joining us.